Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folarin. We started yesterday looking at the aspirants, and there's so much that's going on that's interesting. We stayed mainly within the ambit of the ruling APC. Today, we're going further afield, and indeed, it's our pleasure to be able to speak with Mohammed Hayatuddin. Alhaji Hayatuddin is the 69-year-old aspirant for the presidential ticket of the People's Democratic Party. He'll be joining us remotely via a link from our Abuja studio. So good morning to you, Alhaji Mohammed Hayatuddin. Okay, I'll just try that again. Today, our guest is a 69-year-old aspirant for the presidential ticket of the PDP. And he's joining us remotely from our studio in Abuja. Good morning to you, Alhaji Mohammed Hayatuddin. Okay, I can see that. Can you hear us? Okay, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, please. Okay, welcome back. If we started out together, we've gotten rid of the gremlins among the cables and all of that. And so we can now proceed. Our guest this morning is Mohammed Hayatuddin. Alhaji Hayatuddin is 69. He served on the board of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and that's just mentioning one of a whole field of industrial establishments that Mohammed Hayatuddin has been involved in. At the moment, he is vice chair and CEO of Alpine Investments. And one of the things is that, that one of the principal projects of Alpine Investments is the Ado Bayero Mall in Kano, reputed to be the largest in West Africa. Our guest, Mohammed Hayatuddin, is better known as a banker of repute. Good morning to you, Alhaji Mohammed Hayatuddin.
Good morning.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. There's so much that we could talk about, but first of all, maybe I could just jump in with both feet. After a long and distinguished career in business in the private sector, in fact, you were known as a technocrat of repute, had very, very early successes. There's the Nigerian, well, now the new Nigerian Development Corporation. You rose to the head of that corporation, very early, relatively early, and you were superintending over 140 member companies of the grouping. So there's no doubt, and there's FSB, there's no doubt that you've made your chops, so to speak. Perhaps there will be those who will be surprised that you've now decided that you want to come into politics. Coming from the staid, if I may say so, business environment where things work, where projections can be made, and you know what's going on, and you could bring all sorts of statistical data to bear, into, some would say, the jungle of politics. First of all, let me clear that, where nothing is very certain in politics, and maybe so in Nigerian politics. So that transition from the very tidy arrangements in the private sector to the quote-unquote jungle of politics. Why?
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for having me. Second, to say that no human organization can actually function without a political system. Political systems are needed in order to conduct elections. Elections are conducted because you need a representative form of government in order to serve the best interests of the Nigerian people. So I would say that there is nothing about politics that is actually bad as I see it. I think it depends on who is looking at politics.
Okay.
I decided to enter politics because it makes abundant common sense to do so. Because the nation is at a very dangerous crossroads today, and therefore I needed to affect the conduct and the prosecution of public policy. Having had a long and distinguished career in the Nigerian private sector, and also in the public space in general, and with the depth and breadth of international experience that I've had, I thought it makes sense for me at this point in time to offer the very best of my services to my very dear country. So that's why I decided to go into politics. And the second point I'd like to make is that nation states around the world are now looking more and more like the private sector. Every country around the world is looking for market share. People are looking to find space within which they can strike trade and investment deals in order to promote the best interests of their country, grow their economies, and launch their people into a new era of economic and social prosperity. So those are my reasons.
Okay. Well, on the road to the presidential office, every aspirant has to come through some internal party arrangements. Your party is no different. And we're talking about the sometimes rocky world of politics. In terms of your desire, your aspiration, you have to necessarily come through the process in your party. Now, there are quite a number of people who share your ambition, who want to be, who would like the ticket to become president as well. There's an area that you could help us clear up. The former VC of Ahmadu Bello University and respected elder statesman, Professor Ango Abdullahi, he actually announced that former Senate President Saraki and Governor of Bauchi, Senator Bala Mohammed, have been, selected as the two consensus candidates from the north. And they arrived at this, according to newspaper reports, from a larger field for Aminu Waziri, when they put everything to vote. Aminu Waziri, 7 votes. Bala Mohammed, 10 votes. Saraki, 10 votes. Your good self, 5 votes. But we hear that you are distancing yourself from all of that arrangement. We also hear that the respected professor said that, look, there had been earlier consultation with IBB, General Badamasi Babangida, and that he was merely, delivering as per the guidance of the respected former military president. Could you please clear for us what exactly is going on and why you don't seem to be on all fours with, the two consensus candidates that your party members have said they have come up with? What exactly is going on?
Thank you for that. So I think we need to put a number of factors in sharp relief. Number one, people have unfettered freedom to form any form of alliance or partnership in order to achieve a particular set of objectives. Number two, we're operating a free and open democratic system. Third, there are others who decided right from the beginning that they were not actually going to join this. and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is outside that particular spectrum. It was purely within his own right to do so. Number 4, the first meeting that was held amongst Bukola Saraki, Bala Mohammed, and Aminu Tambol in Bauchi. What they wanted to do was to actually create an environment free of acrimony, whereby they can actually reduce the size of the field so that they could then avoid having an acrimonious convention on May 28. They also wanted to do the same thing with regards to the southern field, because there are far more southerners competing for that office compared to the north. I was invited about 3 weeks after they actually started this. And there are certain cornerstone principles that we agreed upon. Number 1, that we should try to shrink the field amongst ourselves so that only one person may be adopted as a candidate that we will put forth. And if that were to happen, that person and Atiku Abubakar would have gone into the convention from the north. We similarly expected that our southern brethren would be doing exactly the same thing. We allowed room when we met that in the event we do not agree, we can ask for some intervention from men of goodwill so that they can help shepherd the process forward. 2 Wednesdays ago, all 4 of us met after a number of exhaustive discussions spanning about 2 weeks that this thing is not going to fly. We are not able to reach agreement, and hence we are not able to sign the MOU. We met 2 Wednesdays ago, and we said that this thing is dead, and we needed to issue a press statement to the Nigerian public to say, number 1, that we're not going to move forward. Number 2, that we're going to go our separate ways. And number 3, the kind of friendship and alliances we formed, we'll keep it. And it might come into good and productive use probably during the flow of the convention, because only one candidate will be the flag bearer of the party. Senator Saraki was then asked to produce a draft press statement, which we were supposed to review at 10 o'clock in the evening. Unfortunately, Senator Saraki could not produce that statement, and instead said that the time for collection of funds had been extended, so there was no rush in doing so. To my utter surprise and dismay, after we had all agreed that this initiative had completely collapsed and we were going to go our own way, an announcement was then made that 2 candidates by a group of elders had been selected to move forward as the 2 consensus candidates for representing the northern part of the country. Now, we had the absolute right either to form an alliance or not to form the alliance. We are our own housekeepers and our own gatekeepers. There is no other body that's actually superior to ourselves in deciding our fate and our destiny. We had decided that fate in very clear and unambiguous terms. Therefore, when the announcement came out from Professor Amgo Abdullahi, we were actually quite surprised, because it tantamounted to coming up with a verdict after the candidates had actually decided to go their own way. So that's in truth what had happened. And like I was saying to a sister station yesterday, President Ibrahim Babangida is someone who has a towering reputation in this country. He is such a celebrated figure, and he should be left completely out of this, in my view.
Okay. What does this stalemate, if I might call it that, actually mean to the public who, are watching with keen interest all of the parties? It's not just APC and PDP, but for the moment, that's those who we're talking about, who are watching all of the parties in terms of the emergence of the, presidential aspirant. What does this mean? Because you said, to your utter surprise, Senator Bukola Saraki, first of all, didn't provide the statement when it was supposed to be provided, and then later on you were to hear, which was out of your own knowledge of the situation, that two people had been selected. I was talking earlier at the very beginning about the, maybe in a half jocular way, about the murky world of politics. What does this say to you to be, quote unquote, surprised like that?
Well, politics is a very complex business. Politics is all about deal making, both through the front door and through backroom channels. There is absolutely nothing surprising about it. I fully expected that we will see these kinds of politics being played. And for me personally, I think it enriched and deepened my own experience. But let me just say in very clear and unambiguous terms that the notion of a consensus is dead on arrival. We've decided to jettison it. No MOU has been signed by all the four parties. And we've since decided to actually forge forward with our own plans. And right now, without being disturbed by any further distractions, I'm moving full steam ahead with prosecuting a very brilliant and viable campaign.
Because as you just mentioned, for instance, another aspirant, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, he's been quite open about the fact that, it doesn't matter, he's an aspirant, he will be contesting. That's on the one hand there. And now it seems to me that because consensus talks seem to have broken down completely from your perspective, does that mean that now to the field, when the time is right, with indirect primary or direct primary, what does it look like from your end? Because it seems to me that you still are fully in this race.
What it actually means is this, that we have as many as probably 16, 17, 18 candidates, keeps on changing by the day for the PDP. That's a very large field to contend with. And what I would fully expect to happen between now and May 28th is that each of these candidates is going to go out to the Nigerian people and the over 3,600 delegates around the country to marshal their blueprint and their agenda together, to then go and tell a very compelling and convincing story about why each one of us will represent the very best hope for actually changing and transforming this country in a very dramatic fashion. I'm convinced that I'm fully prepared to actually offer the Nigerian people the kind of leadership that is required to move the nation forward and make it one of the greatest countries on the face of this planet.
Because Alhaji Hayatuddin, I was going to come to that. You spent all of your working life in the private sector, indeed, with aplomb, quite successfully. But it is felt that you've never held elective office. There might have been public sector aspects to your core private sector work. Do you think, against the other contestants, that this sort of limits you in any way in terms of the Nigerian people who already know you as a technocrat and a sound businessman, they don't know you as a politician. And people are worried about issues in our country. There's education, there's security, the list goes on and on. Do you feel confident that you'll be able to respond to the yearnings of Nigerians for the kind of government that will fix us, the kind of president that will be able to fix us, so to speak?
So there is nothing in the rules book which says that somebody cannot compete for the office of governor or the office of president of any country without having political experience. I think that notion is completely wrong. Number two, it is also not correct to say that I have not had any public sector experience. In your introductory remarks, you had gone to great length to speak to my experience in the New Nigeria Development Company. The NNDC was actually formed in 1949 by the Northern Nigerian government before the region collapsed into 19 states. And so it was owned by the 19 northern states. It was a government institution, but run properly on the principles of private sector operation. And so I have had a very good stint in government in dealing with all of the northern state governments and the federal government itself, because our investments were not just in the north, but also in the southern part of the country. Having dealt with a number of states across the region, and I dare say across the Niger, in dealing with other state governments and the federal government, I've come to understand how government works and how it is positioned to actually seize on economic and commercial opportunities and the complexity and the character of government. I understand that extremely well. The second point I'd like to make is that I have had to deal with a number of institutions all over the world and foreign governments as well. I've been presidential advisor to 3 presidents. I was on the Buhari Transition Committee and chairman of this committee on the economy. I was chairman of Nigeria's privatization as chairman of the technical committee on privatization. I was on the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. I was involved in Vision 2010. I was chairman of the Nigeria Economic Service Group. And all of these things involve straddling this civil society space, the private sector space, the public space, the international space, the academia, the labor union, and military institutions. I've come to gather all of these experiences, agglomerated them, and has shaped and formed my view of what it takes to actually run a country successfully for a region, and what it takes to actually forge international alliances in order to promote Nigeria's interests. I believe that I'm well prepared for the kind of office that I'm vying for. Let me make a final point on this issue because I think it is important. There are a number of people around the world who have had virtually no stint in politics, but actually vied for the highest offices in their respective countries. I was mentioning yesterday that Warren Harding was a mining magnate in the United States and was elected president of the US in 1920. 1928, Herbert Hoover was in the mining and oil and gas industry, went straight for the presidency and became president. Harry Truman was an investor in the mining and oil industry. The senior Bush was an oilman. The junior Bush was an oilman before they all went into politics. Donald Trump had never held elective office. Hariri of Lebanon, who unfortunately was assassinated, was a billionaire businessman and never had elective office. So if you look at examples around the world, and also in places like Asia, look at Macron. Macron was actually an investment banker. Zelensky, who is the current president of Ukraine, was a stand-up comedian. Tell me, in the light of what you've seen over the last 3 months, whether this man has actually stood up to the plate and provided decisive and vigorous leadership to his country or not. So all this talk about not having had experience in government, to a very large extent, I believe it's a complete whitewash. What you should look at is the pedigree, the depth and breadth of experience of the character of the candidate concerned, his character, and whether that person has actually been involved as a change agent and in transforming institutions. And I believe I'm that person who has that diversified experience to be able to provide Nigeria with a very strong and visionary leadership.
Okay. You know, Alhaji Ayatollah, we don't have all the time that we'd like to be able to delve into this issue, especially your ideas. But maybe I could just pick two areas of the myriads of challenges that any president, including the incumbent one and anyone who is coming after that, will have to deal with. And here I'm talking about two: the security first, and then the economy. Now, the economy, I'm sure you have definite views on. Looking at your antecedent, you are an economist, a successful banker, so you're going to have clear views on the economy. But security, your ideas on that, please.
So I would say that the national security problem is actually unfolding on a scale that is unprecedented, both in terms of the depth and breadth of the challenges we face, and also the challenges that our public institutions are facing in dealing with it. And it seems to me it's like a balloon. Every time you try to press it, the other part bulges, simply because I believe it has been left to fester for a very long period of time, number one. Two, it is also fairly clear that, unlike when two countries fight a war under the norms of conventional warfare, where there are international rules of engagement that are agreed by the United Nations and also between the countries, boundaries are defined. And it is clear that there will be a victor and a vanquish at the end of the day. This is a brand new kind of warfare, where you have independent and mobile agents who are difficult to see, difficult to find, they're highly mobile, and they follow no particular rules of engagement. You kill, they maim, they destroy. That's a very difficult kind of battle to fight. Our armed forces and the police are trained since the colonial days for conventional warfare. It is taking them time to actually catch up. At the end of the Civil War, the size of the armed forces was pretty large, maybe about 500,000 people or 250,000. I cannot exactly tell you what that figure is. We have substantially demobilized, realizing that this thing is actually morphing out of control. The thing to do was to actually plan and execute it and come up with a plan that is designed to actually expand the size of the armed forces and the police tremendously.
Okay.
Rearm them, re-equip them, retrain them, invest heavily in intelligence assets, invest in alliances with other countries in order to fight this particular battle and take it to a logical conclusion.
Okay. Now, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Alhaji, but I wanted to jump in with another important question. A man of your achievement clearly must value education. Is it possible to, look at the state of our education and, quite frankly, give me your opinion on the state of education in Nigeria? I'm talking about the schools now, and how satisfied or otherwise you are with them.
Okay, so education is the wealth of every nation. You and I perhaps have gone to some of the best schools. We got educated with public funds, and we are what we are today as the kind of institutions and the kind of instruction that we received. The state of our education is actually abysmal. We have retrogressed significantly. We are somehow lucky that whilst public institutions have been declining very, very rapidly, private institutions, because of liberalization and deregulation, have actually gone up significantly in number, especially in the southern part of the country. What we need to do are manifold. Number one, I think we need to completely rejig our educational system from the ground up. Number two, we need to invest heavily in some of the existing marquee public universities that were started in the 1960s. These are the big universities that you and I know about. Lagos, Zaria, Kano, Nsukka, Ibadan, Ife, and the like. These have been our centers of excellence that have produced the best universities in this country. We need to check the proliferation of universities, especially tertiary institutions. We need to invest heavily in vocational education. We must make primary education free and compulsory for all. And we need to imbibe modern tools and modern techniques by emphasizing the teaching of mathematics and computer sciences.
Okay, Alaji, I'm going to jump in again. You're going to forgive my rudeness. I'm sorry, you understand it. I'm going to have to jump in again because where we started this from, I hope that you'll be able to, grant us an audience so we can talk about these important things at more in depth. But where we started from is the consensus arrangement within the PDP, your party, and you are saying that whole notion, idea is dead on arrival for the avoidance of doubt.
Is that a question or comment?
Yes, sir. It's a question. Okay. I'm asking for your confirmation that from your perspective, consensus within the PDP is an idea that's dead on arrival.
It's not a consensus within the PDP, it's a consensus among the 4 candidates. Let's get this clear.
Okay, there's a difference.
PDP party has got absolutely nothing to do with this. Okay. And I know that I can just tell you in clear and simple language that Governor Tambol has issued that statement. I'm corroborating lock, stock, and barrel everything that he said because we were all in that meeting. Mm-hmm. Atiku Abubakar has come out to give a very clear message on that. Governor Sule Lamido, who is the chairman of the ex-governors forum, has made a statement, and a committee of the party had also come out to provide a very clear, robust statement a few days ago. I'll refer you to those documents.
Yes.
Once you go through those documents, this now becomes old and stale news that has no relevance whatsoever going into the primaries.
All right. Alhaji Mohammed Hayatuddin, I want to thank you very much for making time for us this morning and also clearing these issues and giving us an insight into what to expect of a presidency, of your presidency, should you indeed get the ticket and go on to win the election. Thank you very much for making that time for us.
Thank you very much.